President Biden is preparing to address the nation tonight. He's expected to explain his decision to end his re-election bid, a move that has added even more uncertainty into the race for the White House.
Joining us now to discuss that and the day's political news is Professor Stephen Caliendo of North Central College. Professor, thanks for being here.
It's good to see you, although I didn't get the memo about the sleeveless white top.
Next time.
I know. What's wrong with you?
Next time.
I don't know if I'd want that image.
No, I don't think anybody does.
Well, let's start right now with President's speech tonight. What do you think he's going to say? What does he need to say?
I'm sure he's going to detail the hours and of course days, maybe even weeks in between the debate where he performed so poorly and his decision to drop out of the race and endorse Vice President Harris. So he'll tell a little bit about what went into that decision making. I'm sure he'll speak about why he stayed in so long, why he didn't make the decision sooner, and that will be all wrapped up in the stories that led up to our conversation tonight. That it has to do with not only American policy, but foreign affairs as well. I think there are things that he feels like he didn't get finished in his administration and things he wants to complete. And so he's setting the table, of course, up for his vice president running for president as well.
So let's talk about Kamala Harris. She was in Indianapolis today speaking at a keynote address. That wasn't a campaign stop. This was actually planned before the president stepped aside. But a lot has been made that she skipped Netanyahu's address to Congress today. Was that a mistake?
It's hard to know. I mean, this is a wedge issue. It will be a wedge issue in the campaign. I mean, there's going to be folks who are typically Democratic, with the capital D, that is, likely to support Democratic candidates, who are on various sides of this. It's not just two sides. There's really a multiple ways that this can be looked at and paths towards some resolution. You know, right. She could have canceled this speech and rescheduled it and been there with Mike Johnson behind the podium, and that would have sent a particular signal. Her campaign said that we ought not read into it, but it's hard not to read into a decision like that when a foreign leader comes. This is a controversial issue, though, and she's going to have to be very clear about where she is on it, and then people are going to have to decide how much that issue weighs compared to others that they care about when it's time to cast a ballot.
Another controversial issue, some conservatives calling her a diversity hire. I'm sure you've seen it blow up on social media and the response. You know, a lot of people are obviously focusing on the fact that she's a biracial woman. Do you think that that is bad for people to be focusing on that? And do you think that this is something she's just going to have to deal with going forward?
Well, she's been very clear about embracing her identity, and that's an important part of who she is. Right. It's an important part of her life experience and how she sees the world. So I don't think that there's any reason to sort of de-racialize Kamala Harris. What's problematic, of course, is to make the assumption that because she's not a white male, she must not be qualified for the positions that she's earned, the positions that she's held. And that's really where some of that rhetoric is coming from. It's a way to sort of diminish her in terms of her accomplishments. And we see that with women consistently, and then when you add the intersectionality between not only her gender, but of course her ethnic and racial identities, it becomes more problematic. And so we're going to see a lot of it, though. We saw it in 2008 when Barack Obama first ran. We saw it in 2016 during Hillary Clinton's run, and certainly we're going to see it this year.
And based on history, do you think that could backfire if people focus on that?
Right. I mean, I think it could. It's how subtle can opponents of Vice President Harris invoke this sort of imagery. It gets harder as we go on in years because people become more sophisticated in terms of how we decode the language. So what worked, you remember the Willie Horton ad, for instance, back in 1988, what was able to work at a time like that would not work today. Mm-hmm. And so we are getting more sophisticated, and there will be additional pushback on those kind of claims.
Yeah.
Professor Caliendo, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Next time, we'll let you know what we're wearing beforehand, right, Don?
Yes,
I appreciate that. It should have sleeves.
Yeah.
If you're including me, it should have sleeves.
So funny.
Thank you.